It's early spring here in the UK, and now is the perfect time to begin work on building the basic structure of deciduous trees. The material I brought along to demonstrate these techniques today is this Hawthorn. This is Crataegus bonagina. This was collected in Wales about 7, maybe 8 years ago, and in that time it's had time to establish, and it's grown all the branching and all the twigging that you can see here. It takes a long time for these old collected trees to become established in their pots. Hawthorn really resents root disturbance, and so my own personal preference is to leave them in the pot for 5 to 10 years. You can do whatever you like with the top of the tree, but if you disturb the roots too often, you're always going to have problems, and you're always going to slow down the development of these trees as bonsai. As you can see, this tree has grown very well. It's covered in twigs. We've got lots of basic branching, and now is the time to begin to work this and to begin to shape it. And in that sense, it's very similar to any other tree that we work, because we're going to use some wire and to shape and build some basic branch structure and some pads and so on and so forth. The significant thing with deciduous trees, though, is of course that they lose their leaves, and so you have to make sure that the work you do and the structure that you build is basically faultless, because ultimately when all those leaves are off, everybody's going to be able to see if you didn't do good quality work, if you were rushing, if you were pushing it a bit too far. It's going to show up. So the structure that we build on deciduous trees has to be absolutely faultless, and that unfortunately is going to take a long time. When we're building deciduous trees, most of the work is accomplished by pruning. So basically, as the tree grows, we prune it and it forks, and then it grows again and we prune that and that forks, and it continually builds up this tracery of fine branches as it comes further from the trunk and as the tree begins to fill out. Because of the very angular nature of hawthorn and the very straight growth that it creates, we have to, in the initial instance, begin to create the basic branch structure, the primary and secondary branching, with wiring. After that, we can then rely much more on pruning. And of course the big problem with hawthorns is, and particularly this one, when it comes to wiring and so on, we've got these thorns. This particular tree seems to have a thorn where every bud, at the base of every bud, and so the first job to do here is to prune this back, to prune some of these long last summer's growth back to what we're going to be able to use to shape as the branching, and then I'm going to remove all the thorns, because if I don't, we'd just be knee deep in blood by the time I was finished. At this point you can see a branch which grew in a previous year, which was then pruned, and now that's forked into two, so one has become two. What we'll now do is prune this again, and over the coming season these two will become four, and that's the basis of how we build deciduous trees. But being a hawthorn, you can see this is very straight and it doesn't have really any character, so wiring is going to be able to help us to really improve the shape of that. It's now been 2 months since we first worked this tree for you, and as you can see, it's grown very well. We've got great big long shoots all over the tree, and so now what I want to show you is the first pruning on this. It's important with hawthorn to prune them very early in the season, because if you leave it too late until the base of the shoot starts to go woody, then you find that the second break is very small, is very weak and fairly insignificant. So by pruning very early in the season, that means we get a very strong second break. And all that involves is basically taking these shoots down to 2 or 3 leaves at every point. Where the shoots are very small, we just nip the tips out of those. And basically what that will do is encourage a very strong second break, which will be very even throughout all the branches and throughout the whole tree, and that will then give us much more twigging much faster than if we were to allow the tree to grow longer and then prune it back harder. That's one of the things about hawthorn that perhaps is a little bit different from 1 or 2 other trees that we use for bonsai. Now you can see this shoot, you can tell the timing for this work when the base of the shoot has just started to go rigid, but it hasn't lignified, it hasn't started to turn woody yet. And all we need to do is basically go in that and prune that to sort of 2 or 3 leaves, so we keep a small part of the new shoot. The final job I have to do on this tree now is remove all these shoots that are growing from old wood. Hawthorn tends to throw these shoots out of old wood, especially if you keep the ends pruned. It'll throw these big long shoots out of the trunk, and those, for several years, you'll have to be quite diligent at removing those, because they will slow the growth of the branches and the fine ramification. So at any time during the year that you begin to see those, you just prune those away and cut them flush with the trunk. That takes away the nodes, so hopefully then eventually it will stop them growing back.